to order. City Clerk, could you read our notice for our special meeting tonight?
Notice is hereby given that a special meeting of the Laramie City Council will be held Tuesday, January 11th, 2022, 6:00 p.m. via Zoom webinar ID 895-1752-8355, passcode 241974 for the following purpose. Number 1, Resolution 2022-07, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and sign a memorandum of understanding with other governmental entities seeking impact assistance funds from the Rock Creek Wind Energy Project, or consideration of a memorandum of understanding with other governmental entities seeking impact assistance funds from the Rock Creek Wind Project.
Great, thank you. Could we move right into a roll call for our special meeting?
Cumbie.
Here.
Gabriel.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
O'Doherty.
Here.
Schmeckel.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Somerville. Absent. Pierce.
Here.
And Weaver. Absent. So that's 7 present and 2 absent, Your Honor.
Perfect, thank you. Let's go ahead and have Councilor Harrington introduce our first item.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to approve Resolution 2022-07, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and sign a memorandum of understanding with other governmental entities seeking impact assistance funds from the Rock Creek Wind Energy Project, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
That was a motion by Councilor Harrington and a second by Councilor Schuster. Let's see. It looks like we've got Assistant City Manager Todd Fieser or maybe our City Manager Janine Jordan.
Hello, good evening, Council. I think Todd may be running a little late out of the training that we had today, so I go ahead and pick this up, and if he jumps on the call, he's welcome to add anything he'd like. This is fairly pro forma, as you know. We've had a large number, at least a good handful of wind projects come up in the last few years, so you've seen items like this in front of you before. The Industrial Siting Council of the state of Wyoming has received a application for this Rock Creek Wind Project. The city of Laramie has been determined to be an affected government and therefore eligible to negotiate for impact assistance payments as part of the application process proceeding through the state of Wyoming. This would just authorize us to negotiate along with the other affected governments for impact assistance payments. Any questions?
Do we have any questions from council? I don't see any at this time. Todd Fieser, our Assistant City Manager, do you have anything to add to this? Todd, I think you're on mute.
Yes. Can you hear me now? All right. We had a staff training today and my computer's been messed with all day, but Janine did a great job covering the intent of the MOU, so I don't have anything to add.
Great, thank you. So, council members, questions? No, I don't see any. Let's go to see if we have any questions from the public regarding this item. They could raise their hand and we can move them in. And it doesn't look like it. So I guess, council, do we have any comments, or should we just go ahead and go to the vote on this? It's pretty basic stuff here. So Any comments from council members? All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. Thank you.
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville, absent, Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver, absent. That's 7 yeses, 0 nos, and 2 absent, Your Honor.
Great, thanks. Counselor Schuster, I'm going to put you on the spot. See if you can dismiss us from this special meeting. Thank you.
We can wing it. I move to adjourn from our special meeting and go into our normal work session for this Tuesday night.
Seconded.
Great, thanks. That's a motion and a second from Counselor Schuster and then Schmeckel regarding ending our special meeting and moving into our work session. So thanks. Let's kick the work session off here.
You need to ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So can we have a voice vote on that?
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. I don't see any opposed. Anybody opposed? Nope, so that was a unanimous vote. Thank you. And now let's move into our work session. We start them off with public comments. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address us on, I guess, any items, on non-agenda items tonight? I don't see anybody. So on this beautiful night in January. Anyway, let's roll our work session, get that going. It's regarding a workforce report, and I will kick it over to our city manager, Janine Jordan, and then just go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Vice Mayor Pierce. The city's workforce report is a report that we started creating for the public and the council probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. In any case, we annually take a look at our workforce, evaluating things like our demographics, our gender split, our wages, how they compare on a regional level, and looking at as well the reasons that people are leaving our organization, and trying to understand our attrition and therefore plan successfully for succession. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to our Deputy Director for Human Resources, Christie Andrews. I know you've all met Christie before, and perhaps this isn't the best time to let you know this, but we will be transitioning in the Human Resources Department this spring with the pending retirement of our Human Resources Director, Lori Curry. So Christie's going to handle this report tonight. She's been working on this steadily as the year has concluded, as 21 has concluded, and we're eager to kind of show you what our workforce looked like as we concluded really kind of the second year of the pandemic. Christie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. I am excited to share with you guys the fiscal year 21 workforce report. As Janine said, I have been with the city for over 10 years in human resources, and I like talking about our workforce. So everything that I'm about to share with you is from July 1st of 2020 through June 31st of 2021. So that's our fiscal year. All of the data, unless I note it otherwise in the actual report that you'll get paper copied later, is from our city payroll systems, HR, budget documents, as well as the Wyoming Department of Labor, the U.S. Census Bureau, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that's where all of this information is coming from. So moving on to the very first graph that I have to show you, we are looking at the summary of authorized positions here at the City of Laramie. So the City of Laramie in fiscal year 21 had 276.25 positions authorized. So these are full-time equivalent positions, are what we call them. The equivalent means that it could be a part-time, quarter-time, three-quarter time, or full, but the equivalent means that these people were getting benefits. Authorized means that it's almost like a placeholder in the budget. We have the money to fill these positions. However, at the end of the fiscal year, as you can see, there were 256 positions that were actually filled. That difference of about 20 positions, some of it has to do with, I think it was back in fiscal year 18, we had some frozen positions. Most of those we have opened up and we've been hiring for, but there's a few that we haven't actually gotten hired for yet. And then most of these positions are in the recruiting phase in some way. So I want to bring your attention to the yellow column there. It says public safety at the top. This represents our police and fire, our sworn police and fire positions, as well as our dispatch positions. So you can see in that yellow column that there has been a change of 7.5 positions that we've actually lost in the last 5 years. The next column, also titled in yellow, non-public safety. This is a lot of our Parks and Recreation positions, our executive office positions, so City Hall, the Annex, those kinds of positions. We have lost in the last 5 years 2.25 positions in those areas. The green, solid waste, water, sewer, these are our enterprise positions. There hasn't been a whole lot of change in those areas. The yellow or the orange column at the end there is the total city employees, and over the past 5 years, over the last 5 years, we've lost 10 positions. So this is kind of an overview of just our positions in general. If we move on to the next slide, it will show the ratio of employees versus residents. So just like in the last graph, you can see that the authorized full-time positions are represented in yellow versus the actual number of filled positions that we have at the end of the year. That's, orange versus yellow. There's a difference every year. We never fully fill our authorized positions. There's always fewer positions. Like I said earlier, it usually has to do with we're in the recruiting process or we just didn't choose to fill them at that time for some reason or another. The green line there shows the rise in residents, so how our community has grown over the last 5 years. The difference between fiscal year 16 and 21 is 813 citizens. Now, for me personally, when I saw that number, I didn't think that was a huge growth in our community number. But when I really started thinking about what does that mean? What does that really look like for our workforce? That looks like 813 more people using our landfills, 813 more people going to our parks and utilizing those areas, complaining that they're not getting mowed properly or the trash isn't getting dumped in those areas. That's people using the recreation center, using the pools. That's more permits that are being requested, more 911 calls, fire calls, police calls. So 813 people may not seem like a whole lot of people, but it is a whole lot more work on our staff, especially when you consider that we've lost 10 positions in the last 5 years. So I think moving forward, Human Resources would really like to recommend maybe looking further into evaluating our current workforce in general and kind of maybe taking an in-depth staffing analysis of where our needs are. As we do that, we can kind of figure out where do we have staffing shortages. Maybe there's some areas where we have a surplus of employees in certain divisions. Later, we're going to talk about how many new employees we have versus employees that are about ready to retire. So we can really look at, are the qualifications of our current employees going to be sufficient to meet the needs of our future community, whatever the community needs in the future. So I think it's probably time that we really dig deep and start looking at those issues. Moving on to the next slide. This is a summary of our diversity at the City of Laramie. I love looking at this graph every year. It consistently reflects what our community looks like. Our workforce always looks kind of like our community. However, from a human resource standpoint, I always want to see us improve in this area. While our ethnic diversity does reflect our community, it's just something we can consistently improve on. Diversity is not just ethnicity, It is also differences in social backgrounds, gender, sexual orientation, politics, religion, age, disabilities, just all of these personalities in general. And I believe that when we have a more diverse workforce in general, we really, it's almost like a puzzle, you know, as each of those pieces get placed into the puzzle, we have a much fuller picture and a much better workforce. So this is definitely something that I think we constantly need to be working on and thoughtful of. The next graph is just a summary of demographics in general. So the city has consistently had more males versus females in our workforce. That's pretty natural for most municipalities. Public safety, public works, they're predominantly staffed by men. However, I get excited about the fact that our gender pay gap at the city of Laramie was only $635 over the fiscal year 21. The way that we figure that out is we take all of the salaries for females, average it out, all of the salaries for males, average it out, and then kind of figure out what's the difference. So when you look at a difference of only $635, that's almost non-existent as far as a pay gap goes. It means that not only are we paying our females and males equally, it also means that we are promoting our males and females equally, because those higher level jobs are obviously paying higher, and there's really no difference between our genders. So this is really an exciting statistic to see. Nationally, that pay gap is around $10,000. So just to put that into perspective of how great this is. Looking at the little pie graph, this is a picture of what our age is at the city. The average age is 44, which kind of puts most of our employees in the Gen X category, followed very closely by millennials. When you look at the little orange section, that is our baby boomers. In a little bit, you'll see a graph about retirement. Almost all of those baby boomers are ready to retire, as well as a handful of our Gen Xers. So that will be interesting to look at in a moment. The Gen Z, I like to point out that 4% of Gen Z employees is a lot of those employees are part of our provisional staff originally. So we hire about 150 to 200 provisional part-time people that come in seasonally. They kind of come and go. They don't receive benefits, so they haven't been a part of these statistics we've looked at so far. But a lot of those provisionals can become really great benefited staff in the long run. So it's kind of creating this pipeline of talent that as they get a little older and they want a full-time job, we've kind of already built relationships with them. So that's what you're looking at when you look at those Gen Z people. The next graph shows the turnover at the city of Laramie. So the turnover rate for the city of Laramie has been 9% for fiscal year, or is 9%, was 9% for fiscal year 21. Historically, we've always been between 10 and 12%. We were 12% last year. And as you can see, that little red bubble, that is the average for state and local governments in general, nationally. Turnover rate typically is about 24% for state and local government. And then looking at the national average, it has been 57% over the last year. I'm sure some of you have heard about this accelerating trend of people leaving their jobs in the last year. That trend has become known as the Great Resignation in the HR world. I'm not sure if you heard that term before, but that's what that 57% is representing there. Our employees being at 9% is really, really great. I think over the last year, employers, especially in low-paying jobs, so kind of those entry-level positions, have really struggled to fill positions. And we have definitely seen that at the city of Laramie. We have struggled to fill a lot of our provisional jobs and well, all of our jobs, honestly. So it's a really good thing that we've only been at 9%. I think that the state and local government workforce report was done in May of 2021, I believe. And in that report, they talk about how after registered nurses, the hardest jobs to fill in the last year have been engineers, police officers, IT, followed by maintenance workers. And as you can imagine, those are all jobs that we are constantly needing filled at the city, not constantly, but we often need filled at the city of Laramie. So when you consider the lack of overall qualified applications that we have seen in the last year, I think this trend of struggling to fill jobs is very true for the city of Laramie. With that being said, I think it's really important that we pay attention to this trend, this Great Resignation. I think in the same way that, maybe this is a silly example, but fashion hit San Francisco earlier than it hits Laramie, and COVID hit New York City before it hit Laramie. I worry that this trend of people quitting their jobs has hit the nation, but it hasn't hit Laramie yet. So I think we need to be really proactive to make sure it doesn't hit us in the way that it has the nation and even other local and state governments. When you look at why people have left their jobs in the last year, there's a lot of talk about health reasons. So we're talking about being overwhelmed in positions, and we're talking about unsustainable work. Those are the words that people use when they talk about leaving their jobs. So once again, I just think that's something we really need to be aware of and be proactive to make sure that people are not leaving the city of Laramie. We don't want that turnover rate to grow. So this next graph, as you can see, shows why people have left the city of Laramie in the past year. And there's a variety of reasons. The Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, has calculated that the cost of an employee who leaves their job is about 6 to 9 months worth of that employee's salary. So at the city of Laramie, the average salary is $59,000. That's just kind of overall our highest level job mixed with our lowest level job, clump it all together. $59,000 is the average salary. So every single time somebody leaves a position at the city of Laramie, we're looking at $30,000 to $45,000 to recruit and train up that person to where they need to be. So every time we lose somebody, we're spending a lot of money to replace them. So once again, just something we really need to be aware of. This other little moon graph that I have here, I wanted to point this out because when we talk about the past year and the pandemic and how the workforce has been affected, there's been a lot of talk about females particularly leaving the workforce. A lot of females have left because of that family care, work-life balance, and as schools have closed down and they had to do homeschooling or their kids got sick, there were a lot of females that was a lot. And so they quit their jobs to take care of their families. However, I don't believe that has affected the city of Laramie the way it's affected the nation. When you look at and I do want to clarify, this graph shows people who have left employment since COVID started. So this is more than just fiscal year. It goes kind of back into fiscal year 19 as well as, or fiscal year 20 as well as 21. So you can see males versus females, there's not, I don't think males or females left at a different rate than we've seen in the past. And when we do exit interviews with our employees and we ask them, why are you leaving your position? Not one female quoted having issues with COVID being a reason that they've left. So if you hear that statistic and people talking about that, just know that has not affected the city of Laramie the way it's affected the nation. The next graph is the retirement graph. So this is a summary of kind of where our succession is. And as you can see, 21% of city employees could retire today. Like they could walk into their office tomorrow and decide to quit and they could retire. And we would lose 21% of our employees. 22% within the next 5 years, 31% of our employees are eligible to retire. So that's about a third of our workforce. And when we think about that, that is a lot of loss of knowledge. And I think it's probably more important than ever that we really start to consider succession planning and how we're going to make sure that we don't lose that departmental and operational knowledge for each area in the city. I think that when we talk about succession, we are talking about that process of identifying critical positions here at the City of Laramie. We're talking about developing an actual action plan to fill those positions as people retire. When we think about this idea of the Great Resignation that we just discussed, you know, it's really hard to find qualified candidates right now, especially at those higher level positions. And so I think it's ideal for us to start really thinking about how we can grow from within our organization and making sure people are ready to take over those high level positions from within, because we are not seeing the applications from the external. There's just externally, we're just not seeing those kinds of applications of qualified people. So I think it's more important than ever to really think about training, development, how are our solid employees doing, and what do they need so they stick around and they're ready to take over as the years progress. So the next slide I have for you is just a snapshot of where the workforce is right now. A lot of the data all of the data we just talked about was from fiscal year 21. So really that's 6 months ago. And I think a lot can change within 6 months. So as I was putting this together, I became curious, like where are we at today? So all of this data is from January 1st, 2022. So this week really. And what you're looking at here is just kind of an overview of our workforce in general. The black part is our solid employees. These are employees that they've been with the city long enough that they've got some really good organizational knowledge. They know what's going on in their departments. They're not eligible to retire, but they're trained up in their area. All the other colored stuff there are employees where we kind of have to be a little more cautious, a little more thoughtful. We've got 44, as we talked about earlier, that are eligible to retire today. We have 59 brand new employees that have less than 2 years of knowledge. So when you consider the national trend of people staying in their job, it's 4 years. So all of these people have been here less than 2. If they follow that national trend, they very well easily could still leave. But more than that, they're not trained up to take over or to know how to do everything in their area quite yet. And then, of course, that yellow line there represents the actual vacancies that we have. So that could be that we're recruiting potentially, or that the job we just have determined that we're not ready to fill it for some reason right now. So in the workforce report that Nancy's going to send you a full copy of all of this, as well as a lot more details. And in the report that she's going to email you, you'll see that I've broken this 2022 workforce snapshot into every division. So you can dive in to see which divisions are more concerning than other divisions. I really want to encourage you guys, when you get that, to read it and ask me questions. I am always in the office. You can just walk into the human resource office. But if you have questions about certain divisions and where they're at, I would love to have conversations about these things. In the full workforce report with more data, you'll see that there's kind of a blurb in each division about what's going on, what are the needs of those divisions, and what have they been going through more specifically over the last year. Because I think it has been a pretty rough year for our employees. And so I think it really captures where everybody is at. So kind of moving on to just wrapping this up, I think that last year, Human Resources did an employee survey, and I think it was really telling because we asked our employees, what do you like best about working for the city of Laramie? And people did not talk about salary or compensation. They didn't talk about benefits. I kind of expected our Wyoming pension to come kind of up top when people thought about like, why do they like working for the city? But it was overwhelming. People responded that the best part of working for the city of Laramie was serving the community. They got into local government to serve the public. And when we look at the year to come, I'm kind of excited to get back to that core reason of why we have become a part of local governments. I think I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but we did a training today on servant leadership. And I think it's just really timely because in reality, we have come out of a pandemic, 2 years of just kind of a pretty rough patch for our employees. Our employee assistant program, when we look at the data for that, we have had more than double the use, almost triple the use of our free counseling sessions over the last year, which really shows where our workforce has been at. But like I said, like going to that servant leadership and remembering that that was the core reason our employees came on as employees. I think it's exciting to kind of get back to that core. And when the city council thinks about the goals and the projects that you guys have in front of you for the workforce, you know, we cannot execute those goals and those projects without an excellent workforce. And so as we talk about the workforce in general, I think it's just really important to really understand where they're at and really understand what they need. And like I said earlier, I love to talk about this. So please, I welcome your questions now, anything that you are curious to know more about, or just any questions you have about the data I just presented. I would love to answer your questions.
Great, thank you, Ms. Andrews. Let's go back to, I see our city manager has her hand raised, and Andy has joined us. So let's give the city manager the floor, and then we'll go around for questions.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to wrap up by making a couple notations for council tonight. Christie talked early on in the presentation about the unfilled positions that we have. And of course, as she said, some of those are being recruited, some are being held vacant for purposeful reasons. But I will tell you this as just a precursor or a sneak peek into the budget. One of the things I'm going to be recommending this year is that we do a workforce analysis, really assess our strength in key areas, and assess not only our strength, but of course our weaknesses. As we adopt our new enterprise resource planning software, that heart and soul, so to speak, of our operation, I think we'll experience opportunities for efficiencies and may be able to just reconfigure the workforce to fit a new paradigm, that new paradigm being hopefully more efficiency in our work operations and day-to-day exercises because of that software tool. And then, as Christie said, we have grown as a community and we need to be upstaffing in other areas in order to support a growing community. The last thing I wanted to mention on the heels of that is the fact that, you know, Christie's noted that our census estimated us as having grown by 800 persons. And you all know from the conversations that we had just a few weeks ago that the consensus, I think, of the city manager's office and of the city council is that we were woefully undercounted in the census. My estimate, you know, and I'm not a statistician nor am I the Census Bureau, but I'll share with you, I think we were undercounted by 3,000 or 4,000 people. So take that into account as you digest the information that Christie shared with you, and you look toward budget and understand why. Christie and I will be recommending workforce analysis this year, and then likely on the heels of that analysis being completed by an outside party, coming back and really talking to you about where and how we better allocate our personnel resources.
Great, Janine, thank you. Let's go to Councilor O'Doherty.
Thank you for that assessment. It's really helpful. I like how thorough you are. I look forward to the other report. At the WAM meeting, we heard from HR people talking about like the opposite of an exit interview. I think they called it a stay interview. Do you do those, or is this survey? It sounds like you're getting at that information that way. And I want to just comment that I'm not surprised that so many people said they like to serve the public, because that's the way I see our employees, and I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Yeah, I am very proud of our employees for that reason. We do not do stay exit interviews at the City of Laramie. I think we have built really good relationship with our employees, and we are constantly asking them those questions, but probably not in that format of a stay interview.
Thank you. Counselor Somerville.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. That was a really great presentation. And I wonder if you could expand, you touched on a little bit of not seeing the issues maybe so bad in Laramie with women leaving the workforce. Wonder if you could touch on maybe some of the strategies that you thought were effective over the last year, 18 months, remote working. And do you have plans to kind of keep those options on the table? Do you see that as a part of the future workforce? I don't know if it's an incentive or a recruitment piece for getting new employees in.
I think that's a fantastic question. I have to give kudos to our supervisors and our managers, because throughout the past year, they have really assessed their individual departments and areas and figured out what their employees needed and responded in the most proper way. So they have gone above and beyond with flexible work schedules, remote work when possible, extra COVID leave as needed. So that has really been managed at that supervisor level for each individual division. And as obviously COVID's not going away, and our support of what our individual areas need is not going away. So I think Human Resources has every intent to respond accordingly for each division, if that makes sense. So definitely, while there's a lot of places in the city that just cannot work remotely, right? We can't have police officers and firefighters working from home, but there are plenty of opportunities when there's concerns of whatever, that we've got a lot of our workforce set up to at a moment's notice work from home or have a flexible schedule or do whatever is needed to keep our workforce safe. So as far as we have not utilized that remote work as a recruitment tool at this point. We have worked with several new hires recently, though, to work remotely from where they lived in another state until they were able to move to Laramie. So it is fun to see how, even though that's not a COVID issue, we really can utilize the tools that, COVID threw a lot at us. And I think we have figured out how to work a little differently. And so we can definitely utilize that moving forward with recruitment, even though we haven't kind of advertised it in that way.
Vice Mayor, if I can, a follow up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. So I just want to say I'm really impressed with the way that you guys have been able to take care of the city employees. As we know, many employers across the city and the country have not been quite so fortunate and have seen those, that might be contributing to those huge turnovers. And I think that's really important for an employee to know that they've got an avenue where they can have a conversation and make things work, especially in a pandemic. I'll just note, I think yesterday's case count was the highest we'd ever had for COVID for Laramie since the pandemic began. And so obviously those concerns are not going away. So I would just want to say good job and thanks for working with the employees. I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree. Counselor Gabriel, I noticed you had your hand up, but now I don't see it. So
sure. I'll go ahead. Thank you. Christie, nice presentation. I was curious about the $59,000 average salary, and if you did a comparison with some other agencies like the state agencies, county, similar type, compare that to what the city's offering.
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, in In the full report that you'll receive from Nancy Bartholomew after this presentation, it goes into more detail in that specifically. So, and forgive me, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, so I don't want to misquote anything. But in that report, it shows that at a state and local government, when we compare ourselves to state and local government, our average is less. However, when you compare ourselves to Wyoming jobs in general, we're we're much higher. So I think we kind of fall into that middle ground. I think over the last couple of years, the city manager, the human resource department, the management team in general has really worked hard to get our salaries at a good place. And I'm sure that we will continue to do that and address those issues. But we really are in a good place overall. I think when you average something, obviously you're looking at all of the positions in general. So if you break that down, there's probably some areas where we pay more for certain positions and we pay less compared to other positions. And there's a lot to that. But in general, you'll see in the full report those comparisons.
And then I was curious too about maybe some of the part-time positions that the city has trouble filling. For instance, some of the lifeguards at the rec center as a liaison to the Parks, Tree, and Rec Board. I know in the past they've had some problems being able to maintain the lifeguards, and so they have to cut back on hours out at the pool. Are you looking at doing anything specifically to remedy that situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think our rec manager has done a great job kind of being innovative as she's seen those problems. So we've done some stipends for those lifeguards. They've done a great job kind of expanding their recruiting in general for lifeguards and kind of finding those positions, filling them in more creative ways than just the normal, like throw it on the city website and hope that kids will apply kind of thing. So we really, not just lifeguards, I mean, we have seen that across the board. We have seen our mosquito and our parks and our facilities departments the past year. Kudos to all of the benefited employees that are used to kind of having that extra help with provisionals during certain seasons when they're more busy. They ended up just doing the jobs themselves because they could not find employees to fill those positions over the summer. So it's not just lifeguards, it is across the board. We have seen that struggle. In my department in general, I wish I had more time to get out there and just recruit because it's so much more is needed than it ever has been in the past. I think some of that has been our pipeline of college students that typically come in for provisional jobs. They'll work the season, then they'll go home, and then they'll come back. And we see them come back every year. A lot of those kids went home for COVID and never came back. So they were no longer even available to come back to those positions. I think a lot of people were on unemployment over the past year. So why would they want an entry-level job when they are getting unemployment? So I think when you take all of those issues and you put them together, it really created kind of a problem for all of those part-time positions. I'm really hoping, though, moving into the year to come, that we're going to be able to see an improvement in that, and hopefully there's just a change. I'm hopeful.
Great, thank you.
So do any other council members have any questions? I see Councilor Somerville.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. My question, Christie, has to do with kind of the pay gap in one sense. And I'm wondering in terms of, I'm really excited to see that pay gap be almost non-existent. Do you guys do a comparison in terms of manager levels? So I know we have several women that are in higher management positions within the city of Laramie, but I'm wondering about middle management. Do you guys compare those?
Yes, we constantly are comparing our pay for all of our employees. We really try to make sure there's no compression issues. So we're constantly looking at how many years of service does somebody have with the city? How many years of service does somebody have in their industry prior to the city? And are all of those people kind of fairly being paid based on those things? The way our pay scale is set up, there are grades, and so if you are being paid within a certain grade, even if your job may look different than the next person's job, if you're in the same grade, that means that you are doing the same kind of work with the same workload, you're having the same kind of supervision over other people, and so really within that pay grade, we want to make sure everybody is equal in each of those grades as well. So I wouldn't say that that's something we have sat down and compared like in a one-time analysis. It's something that we're constantly doing every time somebody's promoted or newly hired. We're looking at those things to make sure that the pay is equivalent across the board.
That's awesome. And the second piece to my question was in terms of recruiting. So both recruiting women for certain departments that we know aren't traditionally staffed by women, but also in the diversity area, do we have any special programs, or how are you guys working on that?
Oh, I love that question. So, I think being a small HR staff, we have not dove into that, I guess, as much as we probably could. We just haven't had the time over the past 2 years because, to be honest, we've been dealing with COVID. However, just today I met with a lady that works at the Career Center at UW, and we had a really exciting conversation about creating a pipeline of diverse students that maybe they're not ready to work at the city, but maybe they're interested in knowing about the city. So what does it look like to kind of bring in some of those more diverse students in all areas? And what would a shadow day look like for them? If we don't have a job open in the department they're interested in, could they come and shadow that position or that area for a day? Are there opportunities that we can offer more internships? We talked a lot about how can we offer internships for pay versus for credit hours, which we've done a little bit in the past, but I don't think we have really utilized that in the way that we could. So moving forward, I think that's something I'm excited to explore a little bit more with the university. When we look at the diversity in our community, obviously the university brings a lot of diversity in their students. And so if we can build a relationship with those students and kind of put our name, the city of Laramie, as a brand kind of in front of their face early on, when they graduate and they start thinking about a full-time job, they'll know that the city has opportunities. And so hopefully that's kind of the direction that I'd like to see us go. But up until this point, I wouldn't say we have like a strong program or anything that's really capturing that.
Well, I would just say it sounds like you guys are thinking about it a lot, and I love those conversations. So I think that's important to kind of keep moving forward, and I appreciate you kind of keeping it on the top of your desk.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, I think it's even thinking outside the box beyond the university. There's a lot of amazing females out there that could be great firefighters and great police officers, and sometimes I think that they just never hear about those jobs. So it's a matter of how do we get the right personalities, the right skills and talents. Those people may never hear about our jobs. So how do we get to them so they know that those opportunities are even available? So we've explored kind of recruiting outside of just what would it look like to go to CrossFit and let those ladies know that they could pass the physical test in a heartbeat, where usually that's where females don't pass, so they don't move on to those jobs. Stuff like that. Climb does a fantastic program where they teach their ladies how to obtain a CDL. Maybe that's a pipeline of females that could come into our public works jobs that need CDL drivers. So there's definitely a lot in our minds in HR about how we could do these things. So I think it's a matter of finding the time to execute them.
Great, thank you. I see our city manager has her hand up.
Thanks, Jane. I just wanted to tack on to what Christie said. This is something we talk about a lot, as she said, and rightly, we've been a little busy with COVID. Although rapidly, I think we're all approaching the point in time when COVID is not the excuse for everything anymore. But I wanted to throw this out. You know, one of the things I've been fortunate to have maybe some space to do in my position with the city, and partly because of COVID, is really do a lot more training in diversity and equity and inclusion. And I just actually finished a really great seminar through the Emerging Local Government Leadership Program on hiring and biases in hiring. So things that I haven't even been able to talk to Christie about, nor do I in fact want to, because we're really busy with other things right now. But things that I think we could implement, particularly with the new ERP software being fully implemented in the human resources realm, would be things like blind resumes or blind applications, I think is the phraseology they use, which I was very intrigued by, where you sort of adjust for cues, I guess, that might reveal ethnicity or gender or other types of characteristics of applicants. And so, yeah, it's exciting. But I did want to say, in addition to just Christie keeping an eye on these things in HR generally, our ERP software will allow us to manage applications a little bit different, maybe our hiring process and vetting process overall. That being said, I want to make sure, you know, that we don't leave the impression that hiring is where it's at. The one thing I've really learned through the training I've done the last few years is you can hire a diverse workforce, but there's a lot of work that goes into creating a culture in that workplace where those people will actually stay long term, and that's a whole other part of the equation. But it's exciting, and I agree with Christie. We have a natural pipeline to engage diverse applicants and diverse workers at the city of Laramie that maybe is unique throughout the state of Wyoming because of the presence of the university, and we can definitely do more to capitalize on that.
Janine, you haven't had the chance to read the full report that I put together, but I actually talk about blind resumes within that report and how that's a fantastic tool to make sure that we are not. I think a lot of people have unconscious biases. They don't even realize it. It's definitely not intentional, but that's one of those things that we can utilize. So yeah, I'm excited that you and I are on the same page with that. And there's some other things in the full report where we can definitely improve in our diversity. And like you said, create a culture of inclusion after people are hired.
That's awesome, Christie. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I see Councilor O'Doherty.
Yeah, one of our youth council members has brought up that he would like high school students to know that there are things to do in Laramie that are working with your hands and that kind of stuff, that not everything is a college degree. And we had a presentation by the wastewater treatment folks, and there's a range of people that have learned on the job and people that get degrees in engineering. And I think it would be cool to have more apprenticeships. After I heard about the job, I wanted to do it, but I'm into water. But I think, you know, reaching out to high school students to get maybe some internships, or like you said, the shadowing, I think that would be cool, and a way to keep Laramie kids in Laramie with a good job with the future. Thanks.
Yes, I've actually talked to some folks at Whiting High School about something similar to that. You know, it's amazing when you look at if you have a high school student that graduates and gets just kind of an entry-level job at the city, and they progressively get trained up and they promote and they move up in our organization. By the time you compare them with the college student who went to college, paid a whole bunch of money for a degree, 4 years later, they're looking for that job, and then they start at some point they're making the same amount of money, even though one went to college and one didn't, if you do it the right way. And I think it's important to realize we have a community where we are so privileged to have the college and have that. There are lots of people that are just really good at a trade, and we can definitely hire those people and get them in a good place. And so, yeah, it excites me to think about potentially working with high school students as well. We've also done a little bit of work with the Workforce Center. They have a youth experience program, and so it's fun to bring those kids in and help them to remember that there's cool jobs at the city that they might enjoy.
Great, thanks, Ms. Andrews.
Thank you.
Yeah, are there any other questions from council? Any comments that anybody would like to make? Any last comments from Ms. Andrews or our city manager, Janine?
I just want to say thank you guys for listening. And like I said, when Nancy Bartholomew sends you the full report, after you read through it, if you have any further questions or ideas, please, I actually have the end of this week off, but I will be in the office all next week. And yeah, feel free to swing by and pick my brain or shoot me an email. Yeah, I just appreciate all that you guys do for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This is a great report, and we are always thrilled to hear this news, and it makes all of us very proud. So I guess we will close this work session and move on to City Council updates. Anybody out there have any updates? Councilor Schmeckel.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Attended the LEPC meeting yesterday, and I'm pleased to report that on April 6th, they'll have an I-80 training exercise around hazardous materials. They're planning on doing this up in the area of the Casper Aquifer, so that they will have some training on hand for how to deal with such a situation should it occur again.
Great. Anybody else for updates? Councilor Cuddy.
Sorry, I had too many windows open. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just would like to let you all know that the Disabilities Board, we met, and we're preparing to do an annual brief presentation to council, probably sometime in February. We're getting that on the schedule at this point in time. And we've got a super good group who's thinking very creatively about some things that we can do in the city. The other thing I just wanted to report on is that our vaccination incentive group, we took a break during the holidays, which is probably just when we didn't need to take a break, but we'll start meeting again on Friday. And currently in Albany County, it is considered that the infection rates are increasing at a very dramatic rate. As Councilor Somerville stated, yesterday we had the highest incidence of new cases that we've had since the whole pandemic began. We had 224 new cases, a daily average of 87. Just to give you a little comparison, on December 20, we had a daily average, we had 20 active cases with a daily average of 6. It went up on the December 30th to 30 with a daily average of 16. By the 6th of January, it was 105 new cases, daily average 59. And currently, our daily averages are more than 1,000% increase from the average 2 weeks ago. So we'd almost flattened out just before Christmas, and we are really rising exponentially. And if you look at a national map, in the western states, it's not too bad comparatively, but it's very high in the east, moving west, and it's very high in California, moving east. So I think we have to anticipate that this is just the beginning. Students come back today, and this thing is very infectious, especially for unvaccinated people. Currently, the hospital is managing, and the number of hospital admissions is not as high as it was when the Delta was the more common variety. Just a couple other things. The unvaccinated are 20 times more likely to be hospitalized. They're 5 times more likely to get infected. And the American Academy of Pediatrics reports that children now represent almost 20% of all infections. So it really is hitting our kids. I had one more thing, vaccinations. At least one dose, our rate is about 60.9%. So that's 61% of our population. And fully vaccinated, 53.13%. So I think this is something that we need to look at and anticipate that in the next couple weeks, it really could escalate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cumby. Councillor Gabriel.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. Councillor Cumby and I had an opportunity to interview Sarah Brown Matthews today for the Albany County Tourism Board, and that will be on our February agenda for approval. If so approved, we will have a full tourism board. So that's good news. And Sarah Brown Matthews, as you know, is a very qualified candidate for that board. Tomorrow and Thursday, the Laramie Parks, Rec, and Advisory Board will be meeting to hear requests from various agencies, including the city, for allocations of the recreation funds that are dispensed yearly and paid for by property taxes that the Albany County School Board has approved. The tax generates between $450,000 and $500,000 per year. Among the projects the city are presenting include the Rec Center Recovery Fund, $175,000, outdoor pool boiler replacement for $35,000, improvements to Washington and Kiowa Park. Other agencies like the American Legion for Baseball, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Bike Net, Pilot Hill Phase 1 trails are on the agenda for approval, and some other agencies as well, Laramie Youth Baseball. And once the advisory board makes the recommendations, they will forward those on to the Albany County Recreation Board, and then their approval will be forwarded on to the Albany County School Board for approval in July. And that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Councillor Gabriel. Anybody else for updates? Councillor Schuster.
Thank you. Don't have much. Wyoming Territorial Park will come up the end of this month. Laramie Historical Railroad Depot will be this week. Hasn't happened yet, but one of the things out the rifle range, I'm going to steal Councillor Schmuckles a little bit of his stuff. Last year we had what was called a Buffalo Bill Range Precision Shooting, and we had people from 32 states. We are taking entries in right now for that and looking for volunteers. So that went over huge and sold out last year, and we occupied a lot of motel rooms and restaurants too. So it was great for that. That's it. Like I said, most of my things are either next month or or end of this month or this week, and maybe I'll have a better update in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anybody else for updates? I will just let folks know that Planning Commission did not meet this week, and Derek is promising a robust meeting in 2 weeks. And Monolith Ranch will meet on Thursday of this week. So kind of in between here. Any comments, council comments by any of our council members? Councilor Somerville.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment related to Councilor Cubby's updates. Personally, we've seen some vaccinated people that we know catch we're assuming it's the Omicron variant. In conversations in the community the last couple of days, I certainly have concerns about the high case count and the strain that it's going to put on our medical facilities. I have concerns about, I know there's a lot of teaching staff that's out, students that are out. I just want to encourage the city to be as flexible and as helpful as we can for anything that we need to do. Any requests from public health for, education information or things that get pushed out, or frankly, anything that they ask for. I think that it is very concerning. We seem to be following the trend of what they've seen in Teton County, and if we follow their trend, next week should prove to be much worse than this week, which is scary to say the least. So I just wanted to let folks know those are kind of the conversations and what I've seen on the ground from my experience the last couple of days. The medical professionals, the regular docs, the pediatricians, they are taking a pounding right now, urgent cares. So if there's anything we can do to support them, I think we should take a look at it. Thanks, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? I don't see anybody. So let's move to our next item, which is the agenda review. So are there any comments or questions related to the agenda?
Vice Mayor, I had a question on 9G in the consent agenda. Facilities use between the city and ABC Family Entertainment for Cowboy Field. Is that what I think it is? Concerning baseball?
I don't know what you think it is.
Yeah.
But maybe our assistant city manager can read your mind. Maybe he knows what it is. Maybe.
Maybe Todd knows.
Maybe you might have to give us a hint.
Well, we can get back to that. I was just curious what that was.
Okay. Anybody else regarding questions?
Vice Mayor, I'd stepped away from my desk for a second and missed the question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Councilor Gabriel.
Oh, thanks, Jane. I was just curious, Todd, about the agreement between the City of Laramie, ABC Family Entertainment for the use of Cowboy Field. Is that what I think it is?
Yeah, it's a collegiate wood bat league. So we've been working with the University of Wyoming, Legion, and other users to make sure that we don't negatively impact, but really it's going to cause strain on the fields, but I think we can manage it at the beginning.
And when would they start?
It's only a short season. I think it's, if I remember correctly, at end of June to the end of July. It's 24 home games.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. So, I think that's it for us tonight, folks. The only other thing I could possibly add is if you'll notice in your inbox, the goals were sent out. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Janine sent them to the entire council. So we have our first goal meeting session 2 weeks from tonight. So if you have a chance to review, I think that would be great. And put your thinking caps on, mostly for what we might need to slow down on, or given the pandemic, or who knows, but or what we need to prioritize. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice remainder of your evening. And I guess we'll call it quits. So thanks. Bye.
Have a good night. Go Cowboys.